Okay, so we're gonna see if this works. Okay, so hey Maya, this is like it's actually not as bad as I thought.
Okay, so I know how it works. It just the fact that I couldn't get a single frame without it crashing.
That sucks. Did you? Because you didn't know anything.
Yes, I did, and I did what you said, and it allowed me to maybe let it loop twice, and then it crashed.
Got it. Okay, so when it was really like crashing, what are the problems? That's good. Okay. Why the hell it crash? Like I said, I put some stuff on this main page. I added this page up at the top of the Moodle for some Maya settings to change. And I put that stuff we said about that playback stuff that we ran into the first class. Um, but I added this section here of does Maya keep crashing when you play things? Here's a couple settings that you can try and change. Maya is real hard on your GPU, especially just because they're all stronger G's. But one thing I highly recommend y'all do, it's such a force of habit, I don't even think of it really anymore. Keep your task manager, your activity manager, whatever you have on your machine, up while you're working. It makes your life a little easier because you can kind of see when this spikes. Like I have my open now, but I'm not hardly doing anything, and you can see it's pretty low. When it's up at 99% and it's just like locked there, Maya is working its brains off trying to think of stuff, and it might crash. So this helps a lot, and you can see what else is using some of your CPU. You'd be shocked how much of your CPU Chrome can run if you have it running in the background, especially if you're like me and you leave it up for days and days and days. Same with Photoshop. Any Adobe products, just through the roof, will suck up memory the longer you leave them open. So definitely try to close as much stuff on your computer when you're working in Maya, and that'll help. But to some extent, crashes just happen. That's why I said everyone's going to get used to saving a lot. But if yours is still super crashing, wait till you can look and see if something weird is going on in your file.
Because this is in last semester, my professor said I had the worst luck with Maya that he had ever seen. He said that to my face after I finished debug an unremovable bug in one of my projects. So my laptop doesn't like Maya.
That happens. I mean, I hate to say I've had that happen before. The worst case usually is that you have to wipe your preferences, which isn't a huge deal, and then you can kind of start fresh with new preferences. Not a terrible end of the world thing, but it is a pain. So if anybody really struggles with crashing and stuff, come just let me know. We'll come take a look together. It's a little different per file, per computer, per use case. So what other like nightmare horror stories do people run into?
There's one that is not like setting keys, like I was that one, and I was losing my hand, and I had to just disappear. So I don't know what that was about, but
Okay. So like, how are you setting your key?
this was just the thing that I ran into last year when I was using Maya, but I have to try to.
It's very common though. A lot of times, I do this all the time too. You're gonna set a key, you'll move something to the position you want it. You think you set a key, and you actually pass to actually like have the letters in your program. If you're adventurous, you can try and turn on water heating. You can try and force yourself light your garage and just turn it off. So you won't lose the rest of your phone. But that most likely, that might be is that you think you set a key or you hit a different button and it wasn't actually retaining the key. So we can take a look just around that. What else are people running into? Did anybody actually have like a good go of it? And they're like, this isn't terrible. Okay. Okay. That's not bad. Does anybody have? Oh, did you have some questions?
During creating the whole animation and everything,
Uh-huh.
fairly smoothly, so I had to save it. And I went into my files to see where it was, and I couldn't find it. So it shows like totally and then because it couldn't find the file anymore. And I know I saved the file. Because I wanted to like save. I mean, you have gone the actual folder.
It's fine if you want to work in projects. I've just never done it that way. It's basically just like it's supposed to be more safe, foolproof for the safe stuff. But so yeah, usually if you want to do that, if you are looking like I know, like she was mentioning, she ran into she can't find her file, which that's a whole different problem. But so I'd mentioned in Maya, as far as saving goes, so Maya likes two different flavors for kind of working. It has this stuff down at the bottom here that's this project settings. If you go to set project, Maya likes working in a project space, but I never have. In production and things, we don't typically ever work with this because you're doing so much and jumping all over the place. But if you go look, Maya, when it loaded on your machine, it puts this whole massive folder structure. But it has a project folder, and you can set this. And when you do that, it's there it is. See, now I'm not going to be able to find all the settings. But it gives you basically like a whole, like a file, scene, versions. It's assuming that you have a complete file with textures and a rig and all the different things, and it's going to put them all in the correct folders. So it's trying to kind of mimic what you would run into in a studio environment. If you do that, it shouldn't save it in a weird place, but if you do save scene, it is going to automatically try to default put it under that little project. But if you don't ever go set a project, you're probably fine. Like I never work with that anyway. I usually just always go file, save scene, or one thing you could check too is remember how we were saying like Maya ASCII, Maya binary. If you come in here, if you set it to Maya, like if you say file open, actually no, yours just couldn't find it in general, so it wouldn't be the problem. I think you deleted your file.
I don't know how I did that.
I hate to say, go look in your recycle bin and make sure that there's not one in there. That is entirely possible. But if you ever try to open up a file or anything and you can't see it, there is a chance. See, it usually does this where it defaults to Maya scenes and it'll open it Maya ASCII or Maya binary. So it'll see everything. So that's a good way to leave that. Does anyone have a file they want to show that they're like, this isn't terrible, or this is terrible, and I want to show? Oh, you don't like make you show yours. Don't shake your head. Does anyone have a wallet that they're stuck on or something with that, or they just don't like, this is the nightmare that I have trying to play with this? I was expecting you all to be like, this sucks. I have a horrible time with this. That's okay. I basically tried to say, here's all of Maya, and only had to animate in like 2 hours. So that's nice.
Mount not was stiff. I thought he was just
That's actually very cool. So I know not everybody can see what he has up on his screen, but he has a nice house. And you look at something like this and you have the access to it, like if somebody else did this, like maybe they were like, what's wrong with this? What would you probably say? Just looking at it, not keys, not anything, just looking at the machine. And doesn't see anything. So it looks cool. I might have it balanced. And this is the sort of stuff that everybody will kind of get a feel for. It's gonna look weird at first, but this will actually look bad. But everybody's stuff will look a little weird in the tiny. So that's why it helps to kind of show your people who sit around you, your friends, who know what looks weird about this, what looks good about this, and then usually they give happy times about some stuff. Okay, so real quick for the start of class, and this is going to be. Oh, here, I'll pull up. A vending machine? There's not, but there's one. There's a vending machine over in in Barnes Ogden. Yeah, I think there are a couple over there. Our absent student sent me hers, so I can show hers. But she cheated and didn't use the rigged model. So cool to see. But if y'all have any, did anybody try to save out of Play Blast? No. Okay. I will test it on her file and I'll show y'all. How you save a Play Blast is super easy. That's what we're going to use whenever we turn in projects and things. I'm going to have y'all give me a copy of your Maya file, that archived Maya file, which to do that, you're just going to end up going to File, Archive Scene. And so, like, you see there's not any kind of real settings in here. But you'd say OK, and it would say Archive and Close. It'd save out a little zip file of your scene. But as far as play blasting, if you go under Playback, Play Blast. So it's just called a Play Blast, but a Play Blast is basically a render that's not pretty. It's a render that's not a render. So when you think of like a CG movie, you think of with shaders and lights and all the pretty stuff. This is a Play Blast is basically going to be just capturing what you see on your screen here. So it's going to look very rudimentary, very simple. And that's all we need for animation. So if you say Play Blast, it's dependent on the window you have open. And you can see, like I'll do it again, it's quick. The more stuff you have going on, this can take a second. It'll kind of do through each frame, but it's not that crazy. But usually this pops up so you can look at it. But I do have a page on here on how to Play Blast. So I had done this on mine when I did this. Maya wants you to give it a couple things when you Play Blast. And once you do this like one time, you shouldn't have to touch it really, probably again in this class. It wants render settings. It wants to know how big to save your stuff when it makes a Play Blast. So the best way to do that is the actual render settings tool that you'd use if you were rendering out like a pretty looking thing. And that is going to live right here. There's a handful of places you can get to this, but it's this little clapboard with a little gear on it. It also lives, like to get to the other one, you actually have to change over to like rendering, and then you can go to render settings. But usually, because it's there in every single menu, this is going to be the one I'd say go for. Oh, and I found over the weekend, for the people who couldn't get this menu, if you didn't have this one, so first, anytime you see this little tiny line with a little triangle on it in Maya, that's its way of saying that there's a collapsed menu in here. This is what they look like when they're open. It's a little like hot dog on a stick looking deal. So if you open that up, you can see it. If you don't have this automatically though, you might be on a different one of these. So these are all of the different, it's different selection modes. But you see if I click like one of these other ones on accident, that goes away. I don't have the option to expose it. So you want to make sure you're on this middle one, which is objects. select by object type, and then it gives you the menu of object settings. So anybody who ran into that, that should make it appear. If for some reason, okay, thank God, because I kept trying it. And I'm like, that is the only thing this could possibly be. But so to set your Play Blast stuff, you would go into your render settings. And this will change depending on the file that you're in. But you open this up and basically just scroll straight to the bottom, and you got to give it a size. So this image size section. You can use one of the presets that are in here if you want. There's like every preset known to man. Or you can just type it in. But usually we're going to be working at 1920 by 1080. So HD 1080. Or you can just type it in down here. And then you just close. But then it has render settings going. And then you can go to playback. Click the little thingy for Play Blast, and you can see everything. You can set a custom frame range if you want to. I think by default it's going to go with every frame that it sees in your frame range. I have the other stuff I'd say set in here. So yeah, set your render size. When we are going to be working on animations, we didn't do this with the bouncing ball, but we're going to do this just for safety for everybody. We're going to create cameras. So that's super easy, but why we're going to do that is because then we can basically lock it. And then, because I know if like right now, if I move around in some of this stuff, like that's the view. So if I Play Blast, it's going to look like this. And if I move my thing on accident, it's going to look like this. If I want consistency though, I want a camera. So the way you make a camera is super easy. You go up to create. Anything that you're making and bringing into Maya that's not something somebody else already made that you're pulling in is going to live under create. So if you go under create, this is all like your geo, like basic like shapes. Like you can see like very basic shapes. They used to give you a teapot, but I guess you don't get a teapot anymore. A soccer ball. But if you go under here to camera, you don't need all the fancy ones. You can just say camera. And it gives you a camera. And it always drops it at origin. There's a couple ways to position this. The way I usually like to do it is to just like, even if it's not selected, if you select it either here or over in your graph editor, outliner. If you go under panels, look through selected. Now I'm looking through that camera. So now I can move around and look through that camera. If I know I want to see the ball, I could even come in here and say, show me the ball, and hit F and focus on it. But then I could put a camera kind of where I want, frame up my shot basically how I want. If you want to get all technical with it and start playing with like aspect ratios and framing and aperture and things like that, you can do all that. But in general, just a default camera for the stuff we're going to be doing will be fine. So then once you kind of get your camera how you like it, what I usually will say do is select your camera and then come in here and just, you can usually select everything, even scale, even though scale doesn't really mess with a camera. Actually, I selected all the wrong stuff. Come on. See, Maya's silly for everybody. If you right click, you can say lock selected. And by doing that, you get these little, it grays out. So now, if I'm in my camera and I try to move around, I can't. So that's how I think is the safe way to work, because now whenever you come in here, say I'm in a different mode or something, like I go to this one here, I can go to any of my windows and say panels, perspective, and then that camera shows up right here. You can call it whatever you want, do whatever you want, but then I still have that perspective camera that I can move and do whatever I want. So if it's me working, like if you wanted to do over here, like all the different views, if you wanted to do like a split view where it's just two of them, you could keep your perspective up in one and you could open up your camera in the other to see what it's actually doing. So I could come in here and grab stuff and move it around and see in my camera what it's actually doing. And you can change this where it's top and bottom, but it's more, you actually have to grab stuff and change it, I think. It's been a long time since I made this top and bottom. But does that make sense as far as why we're going to do a camera for anything that we do? Say that one more time. Yes. Well, so not really. So When you do a play blast, it's going to be dependent just on the view. So like you can see when I click this, it gets a thin little white line around it. It's not the most obvious thing in the world. But whatever you have selected is what it's going to play blast. You can specify, I think, if you go into the settings. Display, yeah, so we want display size to get from the render settings. Scale is going to be what we want it to be. You can customize frame ranges and things. You can, so you can do. You can say view. But you can't select the camera. So yeah, as far as I've known with Play Blast, it's always just kind of whatever you select. And up until you're ready to click go with Play Blast, I can select the window that I want. And then say Play Blast. And it's going to overwrite it. You can see kind of what it did. And then if you go look under, I think it lives under videos. And I think if you go into your preferences, you can change all this stuff. You can change where it's Come on. Oh, where's my video? Oh, it said movies. Yeah, that's what I'm going for right now. It's under movies, which I don't. Might be under the Maya structure. Be a good thing to know, because I thought I knew where my stuff got saved. Let's see. I'm used to doing like renders, not. There we go. It saves it under. Well, that's not very helpful. You can specify down here. There we go. That's where. So it's going to save it under. Yeah, it's under the default project structure. So it's going to, by default, it's going to save it under whatever your user profile is. Documents, Maya, projects, default, movies. So you can change this to whatever you want, but give it a name that you want and do all that, and it'll save it there. Yeah, this is your default project structure, by the way, if you do work in a project. You can see it gives you a lot of stuff that you're going to want or need, but you don't need 90% of this stuff probably for what we're going to be doing. So I think it's more trouble than it's worth usually working on it. But it does save it under movies. When you get a little. You can see when it saves, it does hide automatically anything that it does when you play in the viewport. So curves, it'll hide. The grid on the bottom, it hides. I think you can set that to be visible. Or maybe not. But that is going to be how you play blast. So if anybody wants to take a stab at play blasting, I would love to see if anybody has anything, even if you are not happy with it. I won't show it and embarrass anybody, but we could try play blasting, and y'all could upload it to that OneDrive folder if you want to show me what you worked on. If you want to do that, I have. So remember this link right here, the deliverables link, is going to be where all of our projects are going to go. I do have an in-class folder. I made one for About to Golf. I have a couple. Good job, guys. Oh, y'all don't need to put the Art 250 if you don't want. Usually, I will give you my lecture now on conventions. Because that is a thing. I am a stickler for naming conventions and for folder structures and all this stuff. And I made this little document last semester that probably will read like stereo instructions to most people, but it's still helpful if it opens. So y'all can look over this if you want, but in general, if you work in a creative field, graphic design, animation, visual effects, games, you name it, naming conventions are going to be your life, because your file is never going to be your file. There's going to be probably like 20 other people minimum that may encounter your file in some form or fashion. So it's crucial that things are named correctly. So I think that's a good habit to start now, because I know when I was in school, I was never taught that. And first job I had, I went, how do I find something? And they went, it's stupid easy. You just look at the name of the file. Because literally every time, if a file is named correctly, it follows something kind of along these lines, where I can literally look and say, this is the project I'm working on. This is the sequence. Like, this is the shot number. Because that's usually the structure you have in a film. The department, so if you're in animation, it'd say animation, then your file name, and then a version number. So then anybody in a production should be able to then go to the folders, like just go to a file browser, and then find the exact same folders that are each underscore is going to be the thing. So in this case, for y'all in this class, this is very simple. We don't have a whole big elaborate project structure, but it would be like your last name, and then it would be the name of the project, and then whatever the version number you were on. So you could kind of have, if you just chop up part of this, it'd be more kind of like this name. It'd be like your name, your project name, your version number. It's consistency. It just makes it easy for people to keep track of, and it kind of forces you to start learning folder naming and versioning and all that stuff. I mentioned the frame padding a little bit in versioning and stuff the other day. So when I saved a version of something, I did not save it as, like Jessica Ball 2. So, or like, I see a lot of times it'll be like Hogan Ball 4-3 Maya. So the problem with all of these is that if I pull it up into a file browser, it's going to just kind of go off the first letter of whatever is on the stuff, and it doesn't really tell me much. It's not easy to read. Underscores are great. They're your best friend as far as making things easy to read. I can read this and see Jessica Ball and a version number. But as far as version numbers go, we usually do frame padding. And by padding, that's usually like 4 digits. So something like this. This would be like version 0, like .Maya. This is the universal kind of number of padding. You usually don't see less. You usually don't see more. And the logic behind it is a couple of things. Usually you're not going to have more than 1,000 versions, or 99,000 versions of a file. Usually this is going to cover your bases as far as how many you have. But when you pull it into most software, Maya, a lot of these, this was from Nuke, but it automatically sorts things based off the number, just like a lot of folder structures do. So if I was to name everything sequentially, like this was 1 through 10 or 12, it's going to pull it up like this. And this is going to be a pain in the butt, and it's going to ultimately make everyone you work with and you and everything go crazy. So the correct way to do it would be to name the exact same thing more like this, where you add frame padding. And so by adding those zeros, it's forcing it to kind of work numerically. So everything will load correctly. So usually we always want to start kind of with 2 zeros and then the shots. So say it's like version 1. You'd actually call it version 1. But if it's like a shot, usually we do them in like, you can read through all this, but I'll try to explain a little bit of why in production things are named differently. But usually you're never going to see like a shot 1 or a shot 2. You're going to see shot 10 or shot 20. And the reason that we do that is because of stuff like this. If somebody goes, well, we need a shot in between this, or we forgot we need this extra cycle of animation for the game or something like that, they can do one in between and make it like a 35 or a 15 or something. Usually it's a division of 5. But it just makes things neat and tidy for everybody in a production. Makes it so it's real easy to hunt stuff down. This is great for versioning too. When you have versions, like you see, if you go into Maya and you do the auto version, like I was showing y'all, that it has in here, say, like this is already somebody else's file, but say I went and said increment and save. So by default, Maya is going to not give you the version, but it's going to give you a 4 frame padding frame extension like this. And it starts with version 1, which for versions is usually fine. But it's giving you this wiggle room of having a lot of different versions, and that if you wanted to go look in a folder where these are saved, it's going to show them to you numerically, which is usually sequentially, like, time-based as well. So it's just a good habit to get into. I'm not going to make us do this in this one. I think this confused everybody last time. But just so y'all know, just because I was the reason that animation productions always start things on frame 101, not 1, not 0, not 100, everything typically starts at frame 101. And it's because you basically just pretend the 1, 0 is there on frame 1. The reason that we start there is typically for animation, so for any other department, and it's for a thing we call pre-roll. So what pre-roll is say you have a shot of, like Disney Princess and she's like lying across the screen. When you pull her into the scene to start working on it, she's not standing there, she's not doing anything, so you need to get some frames that you can get her into the pose that she's going to start in. And you do that for motion blur, for all this stuff down the line that doesn't affect the animation at that time, that they're thinking through. Somebody's going to render this eventually, and it's going to have motion blur. And if, the frame before the first frame, she's standing here like this, motion blur can't grab her because there's nothing going on. So animators have to do pre-roll. So even though the first frame will be frame 101, they have that 100 frames that they can kind of manipulate the characters, do whatever they need to do. Sometimes they'll literally be able to let them start off camera or off frame, so that once the first frame starts, they're already in motion, the motion blur is going to cover it correctly. Again, y'all don't need to worry about this right now, I just want to know. I think it's interesting. I know when I first started doing stuff, I had to be like, why is everything about 101? And they're like, it's just what we do. But it's usually like that. So then it also gives room for the leader departments if the editorial needs more frames or something like that. They can be like, actually started on frame 36, so we have a little more room to do stuff. So it's just a safety thing. Usually in animation and all these other type of productions, we want to build in fail safes so that we have room to grow and room to do stuff as we get going with things. That's another one here. A lot of softwares, some of these 3D softwares and compositing softwares and things just don't like 0. Some stuff like Maya will start on 0. Some other softwares will start on 1, and so it just can kind of cause a disconnect. So if you all consistently start on a weird frame like 101, everything typically works. And in most software you're in, if you see frame padding, it's going to show up as pound signs. So that's kind of the universal thing saying this is an order of, look for any numbers that fit this amount of padding. It's just going to look for like 4 digits of numbers. So again, y'all don't need to worry about most of this stuff. Basically, just save your files nicely, make them easy to read. If the project is a scale assignment, and you just call it like tail 4, someone in here will do it. And then I'm going to stand there, I'm going to do a critique, and I'm going to go, I'm going to respond to this because it's called tail 4. So I'm a big fan of pushing our last name underscore the project name underscore what the version we're on. Does anybody have any questions about that? I'm not going to tell you if you don't do the right thing. Good practice. I recommend everybody kind of reads through that if you go to it and just kind of see for anybody looking for jobs and stuff, like why you do that stuff, because it is a big deal. Understanding frame structure, and if you know this stuff, like literally y'all can start at any studio. You can start at Kickstarter for it. You can start at some little place up the road. They will probably have a very similar project naming structure for the whole network that they're working on, and it makes it really easy because then you can jump right in and go, I can go buy that file. It's a modeling file. I use an animator or a rig. I do the rigging tool for it and pull it. So not super useful over in here, but good to know. All right. Oh, and for anybody, I told y'all I am trying to record these because I know we do kind of cover. Oh, I'm not putting them in there. Haha, I changed that. I'm putting them on YouTube, but I'm going to put a link in here to that YouTube because they're really long. But I'm recording this now. I'm going to try and keep videos of all this stuff so that if anybody does want to refer back to stuff, you have that option. What else have I not mentioned? So I know we talked, this class especially, we got a little, we didn't get as far. I had the same class right after this across the hall. And we actually got a little bit of start section meetings for the fall. But for everybody got, I want to do it for like so I basically figured everybody's going to come in here and some were going to be like, I didn't touch it for the weekend. Some were going to be like, I did it and I hated it and I didn't get anywhere. And my questions, some were going to be like, this is easy. So I'm going to kind of give everybody just 10 days to do more of a we'll talk more about that in the coming classes. But as far as our project goes, so like I said, everything that I do for my projects all kind of lives in this little folder. So if you just kind of go to that link for that top link, the OneDrive folder, then go to projects. All I have in there right now is the foxtail. The assets live in here. There's 2 tails. There is, I will show you the different tails. So you can, oh, I broke that up. I don't want that. Imports. Okay, so there's this tail, and then there is this tail. All right. So both basically are going to have the same sort of controls and things on them, but they just look a little different. So it's just kind of dealer's choice which one you think you like the shape of better. Some people really like this one, some people don't, but it'll give you control to curl the tail and do all that. And we're going to go over that part. But as far as the ball, it's really no different than the ball that we were using for the bouncing ball. Same thing, just with a tail attached to it. So this one, same thing, same controls. You can. It's interesting to kind of see a couple of different people, bless you, setting up stuff like this and seeing what it looks like. But they're basically all going to be the same. So that'll be dealer's choice of which one of these you want to work with. They're both in here. And these are not like the other ones where like once you load this in your file, you should not get that like reference issue or anything like that. If you go to file imports, you shouldn't, no one should get that issue that pops up and says like, we can't find this file. You should be fine. But under here, so for this project, you are going to animate that little ball and you're going to spell things correctly. You're going to animate that little ball and you're going to try to give it a little bit of personality. I know some of y'all are going to be more confident in this than others. So really kind of the ultimate goal is just making it move and making the tail make sense for how that moves. That's ultimately the big thing I'm going to be looking at. So I gave y'all a couple examples of some stuff you could do, but it's kind of dealer's choice. But basically like shoot for like 5 to 10 seconds. So it'd be 24 times 5, 24 times 10. However long you want it to be, but 5 seconds should be like kind of the minimum of about where you're going to get something decent looking. And you got to use a little foxtail guy I gave you. But give it a goal. So literally, like you could be jumping over something. Since we've been practicing jumps, that's kind of where I'm steering most people to, is try to jump over a hole or jump into a hole or, jump against a wall or whatever you want to do with it. If you want to go crazy and have it, chasing after something and leaping through the air, you can totally do it. Whatever level of comfortability you have. Camera, you're going to put a camera in there, just like we had mentioned. I'll show you the breakdown to the rubric to give a little better idea of what we're going to be looking for. And I very much didn't update the date on this, so I will update that. But I believe blocking, I'm going to have y'all turn this in kind of 2 parts. So the first phase, y'all are going to turn in a blocking pass. So kind of like we mentioned last class, before you commit too much to anything that you're doing, you want to block everything out. And blocking should be simple. Blocking, the more I was looking at it over the weekend, I'm not a fan of changing it to stepped blocking. I showed you how you can change the interpolation of the curves in your graph editor. You can make it like linear or stepped, so it literally pops from curve to curve. When you change back to a spline, it messes up the tangents. I'm just not a big fan of it, so I don't really care if you do it in a spline or not. If it says that in here, I will update that. But just the basic keys that you need to do your animation. So if your ball is hopping into frame and looks at a hole and then jumps over it, cool. It'd be like, the hop in, kind of the down, the up, the down, kind of pause, and then the jump. So it should basically follow the right timing. It's going to look weird. It will not have polish. It's not going to move correctly, but it'll at least have those key points, and you can time it out so everything, when it plays back at speed, you're going to go, that's when I wanted it to get there. That's when I wanted it to jump over. It's working out your timing. It's also working out the layout. So somebody had asked me that if you do all your animation and it's perfect and you're done, and then you realize that you want to scale everything down. How do you do that? I'm like, it's manual. It's kind of a pain. Because if you set a bunch of keys on stuff and you're, doing a bunch of things to everything in there, it can be a pain because when you scale that stuff down, now every key that you have that's touching the ground isn't going to be touching the ground anymore. So it's doable. It happens all the time. But your best bet is that's why we do blocking, is to kind of work out those sort of things before we commit to going in and like really noodling through these curves and the shapes and all the different things. So the first phase of this is going to be your blocking phase, and it's going to be super simple. So just your extreme poses and just kind of the beats. So if it needs like a second to stand there and kind of think, give it that second to think, and then go into your next key of like jumping over a thing or doing whatever you want to do. Does that make sense for the blocking? This is going to be due, this is our third class. It should be a week from today, I think, which would be the 27th. So I just didn't update my days. So this should be the 27th, I believe. But it should be super easy. Like, y'all should be able to knock this part out in class. It's just kind of working out your timing. And I just need a little play blast for that. You don't have to give me your Maya stuff. And then I'm just going to look over it with you. I'm going to note that you did it, because it's part of your grade. I think it's 10 points of your grade that you turned it in on time and that you have it and you did it. But it's mostly just so I can kind of work over your timing with you before you really dig too deep into the animation itself. And then the final polish is not due then. I gotta go back and look and see when that's due. It's due like a full week after that, I think. But I'll find that out for sure and put it in my little cheat sheet. But the final animation is going to be the polish phase. It's going to be once you go through and you actually start doing the in-betweens and adjusting the little tangents and curves and stuff on everything, and then actually going through and doing the animation on the tail. So we'll talk more about animating the foxtail later, probably not today. But it's basically, you're just going to think of it in terms, like I was saying, of a ball, not a ball with a tail. You are going to think of it just as the front part and use the same controls like we were playing with the bouncing ball, and just deal with that. And just pretend you don't even see this. It's going to look kind of weird. It's going to be sticking straight out behind it as you grab this thing and move it along. And that's okay. So your blocking can just literally be like, it just move it along. The last thing you're going to do after you are totally, totally happy with the ball, and you're like, my ball is great, then you're going to go through and you're going to do the tail. And there's some cool tools and stuff here in Maya that we're going to talk about, like the grease pencil and things. It basically has like Procreate, Animate type situation built into here so that you can draw all over each frame. So it's useful. Animators use it all the time, like animation supervisors. That's how they give notes. They'll come into your file and they'll draw all over the file. Before that, it used to be animators with expo markers and saran wrap all over the screen. So this is much better. But I have a page on it already if anybody wants to go cheat and look and see how to do it. But it's called the Blue Pencil tool. It used to be called the Grease Pencil. I think Blender has something similar. If anybody's used to that. Yeah. So they used to all be called that, but you can see it's free will. Just kind of draw whatever you want on there. But it makes it real easy to, once you have the ball in place and kind of the way that you want it, then it's real easy to kind of go through frame by frame and kind of draw where you think the tail should be. And then you can come back and kind of animate it into place. So it makes it way, way, way easier. If you want for your blocking, this is also a valid way to do your blocking. I want you to actually go put your ball and place things in the right place, but if it helps you to kind of see things more in a 2D way, this is a very valid way. A lot of animators will come and they'll turn it on and just kind of start plotting out their animation with the Blue Pencil tool, which lives up here. But they might come through and be like, I want my ball to be here on this frame, and here by this frame, and they might actually kind of work it out like this. So it's just like a grease pencil that you would do for a grease pencil, like with the tools you would have in Animate or Procreate or any of that sort of stuff. So we'll talk a little bit more about this next class, but super, super useful tool, and you can turn this off whenever if you don't like it. If you're like, I'm done seeing this stuff, it's easy to get rid of. Just make it undo. But that is what I recommend for that. When you turn this in, you're going to turn in a play blast, just like we said. You're going to also turn in that archive file so I can poke around and see what you did. So I have links to a handful of different sites out there. I'm sure if y'all have tinkered at all with 3D, you've seen there's not, when it comes to 3D, nothing is free. Everybody loves to charge you for tutorials, charge you for models, charge you for everything. There are a couple of places that have some free stuff. Like I know, actually Polyhaven's usually the one I'm thinking of. All of these are good, and you just kind of got to look through them and find, like you'll see stuff that costs that you can usually search by free. I know TurboSquid is a pretty robust free. TurboSquid's been around since the dawn of time, and they have all sorts of stuff. So I could come on and be like, look, maybe I want to pretend this is a dumpster and I want my ball to jump into a dumpster. You could download this sort of stuff. It would just be, please don't make me register. Oh, it's going to make me register. I don't think I have an account right now. I haven't used TurboSquid in a long time. But you download it. Usually it'll tell you on any of these files. You can filter it by what software you're in or not, but usually it'll tell you like what it'll work in like this. And it'll tell you the file types. So file types that pull in super easy into Maya in general, like you're usually not going to see like a .ma, like a Maya file, but ones that are OBJ or FBX are going to be the ones that probably play the nicest with Maya. Those are basically just object files. It's a piece of geometry that you can dump into your file. But basically you just download that, know where you saved it, and you go to File, Import. You don't need to worry about any of this sort of stuff, but you just say, so like I always open up the little menus like this just out of habit so I can see everything. But you just say import and it'll give you a little screen. You just navigate to where that lives. If for some reason this isn't set to all files, that happens sometimes, it might be set to like a limit or something random. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, there isn't all files and then everything will show up. Because that happens a lot where you'll be like, I have an FBX file. I know I saved it, but it's not showing up in here. Just make sure you can see all the file types. You'd say import and it would drop your thing right in here. So y'all can definitely poke around on these free sites if you want a model of something. If you're like, I really want a tree or whatever, you're limited by your free options. Well, maybe don't put that lady in there. But there's all kind of stuff, and some of these are going to have textures and stuff like that. You don't need to worry about that. I'm sure most of y'all are probably not super comfortable if you were given like texture files and how to apply all that, but if you want them to jump over a giant paint roller or a hedge, it depends how ambitious you feel. But you definitely don't even have to use any of this. If you want something simple for it to jump over or interact with, you can definitely work with like the stuff in Maya. It has a decent amount of shapes in here. You can put pretty much whatever you want. If you want it to jump over a coil, you can give it a coil. So it doesn't even have to have another object. I don't think I specified that you have to have an object. One obstacle. So it can just be a jump. So, but give it a reason to have a jump. So if it's trying to jump over something, maybe you have a ginormous cliff that your ball is sitting on, like that, in my wonderful camera framing below the ground plane. But maybe it's something like this, and it's just two cubes, and your ball is trying to like wiggle its butt and jump across the thing. That'd be great. So it can be super, super simple. It does not have to be anything crazy. You do not have to go download anything if you're not up for it. But I wanted to give you all those options. So you have all that. I don't think anybody's going to run into this. In case you do, if you open this thing up and these guys, whichever one you pick, don't look like this, it's the normals got reversed on the model. But we'll cross that bridge if anybody gets there. But they came in fine for my file, so I think you're going to be okay. I give you specifics for how to save stuff, but it's basically just kind of the default stuff that's in there. And the stuff I cover under the play blast page and saving and all that sort of stuff. But last name _ Foxtail and before, so I didn't even care if you put the version number. If you put the version number, that's great. Does anybody have any questions about what I'm looking for, what we're going to do for the Foxtail? I'm going to show you all a couple examples. Okay, well this lives in here if anyone wants to refer back to it. I do have the grading rubric, so you can literally go through and go see what you're going to be graded on, but it's pretty general stuff, like do you actually have it, does it have an obstacle, did you touch all the parts of the rig? So, is your ball just moving up and down across the frame, or did you actually add some rotation and some squish? Did you try to touch everything? So, I don't usually go through every little specific thing here, I'll let y'all go look through these. But I do have, did you turn in your blocking pass on time? That's a little different, that will kind of have a break up in the middle. But usually then when I get these back to y'all, I'll have kind of a little blip at the bottom, where I'll tell you any feedback I had about your stuff. Any questions on my grading rubric? Groovy. Alright, I do have, if anybody kind of cheats and wants to get ahead, I do have a whole page on Foxtail reference. This is usually the second thing people do with animation in 2D or 3D a lot of times after a ball. And you can see there's these ones up top are all videos of people doing tutorials, free tutorials of how to do it. So if you want a couple different people's perspective and flavor, like I watched this guy's video all the way through. He actually does a pretty nice job. But if you want to walk through different people and see how they do it. And then I had some from a previous teacher I had how he labeled some different examples. So I just kind of left them how he broke them up. Of like an okay example, a decent example, and like a really good example. So this would be kind of like it's a good example. It's fine. This would get a decent grade. It's got an obstacle. It's trying to bounce. It's got some squish. The tail is trying to move, but it's not quite. It could have a lot more life to it. But this isn't bad. This is a decent bouncing foxtail. Same with, there's some other ones. Some of these are going to be kind of small. Let me get full size because it's super short. But you can see things feel a little floaty sometimes. It doesn't always stick. And then you can kind of see as you get to some of that are a little better. Look at all the kind of personality you're getting in the tail on this one. Like, that's great. Same movement basically as this one. But this is this big, fat, heavy tail that doesn't do much. And then this one is this little springy tail. That just looks a lot better. This one was cool. They showed their blocking. They did it in 2D. Did like a whole big thing. But it's still just basic, simple shapes. So if you wanted to get crazy ambitious and do this kind of stuff, this would just be like cubes. It'd be pretty simple. So a lot of room to explore. So if you're more of a graphical person, I'm fine with this potentially as your blocking if it's actually your blocking. Like if we can actually go through it and go put a ball in that scene. Like if you do this, go through and actually move your thing there, set a key. Move your thing here to this frame, set a key. You know, that kind of thing. So we can see that. And then I just got some reference and stuff that kind of shows the same principle of like the tail and the things that you're going to run into. There's some really nice drawings and things of follow through and overlap and stuff. This is basically what you're going to run into with the foxtail. All of this is foxtail stuff. Like these, great reference for how tail would move. But it's all physics. If y'all remember taking a physics class back in high school of like, you know, think about when you slam on the brakes of a car, what happens to your hair, what happens to your clothes. They go forward even though the car stopped. So, stuff like that. I like this one a lot. It shows a good job of this squirrel landing and then the tail springing up. And same with these. So, a lot of good reference that y'all can peek at if anybody needs some inspiration or feels a little stuck. But these were just a couple that I pasted in here. There's seriously probably like 100 different people's tutorials for how to do a foxtail on the internet. But if you watched one, like the order I put these in is the order I thought that they were probably the best that I liked. Okay. Any kind of questions on a foxtail? Y'all are all real quiet today. It's already Tuesday.
Well, just prefer to ask my questions like during the break since I have a lot of them. And
Oh.
some of them aren't related.
Fair. So at this point, what do you think would be a little more helpful to y'all in the community? So everybody was trying to have everybody play and work at their walls and have to come around and kind of work at each person as we're doing it. Or I can kind of work on a keyboard and show it on my screen and then we can kind of talk through stuff. Which sounds like a better option. Do you want to kind of tinker at your desk for a little bit and then I get to you eventually? Or shout out your stuff and then kind of work through it? Tinkering? Tinkering? Alright, let's tinker it. So, everybody open up their balls. For now, let's not run with the foxtail. Let's just open up a ball, and we're just going to try and get everybody's keys. So, if you're having hotkeys that you're not figuring out, or stuff that's not working, if you're the most on fire, and you're like, the most like everything is terrible, like, you can throw your hands up in the air and try to run first. Okay. So, we can do that for the Wi-Fi and let's see what it is. That's great. There's a video with the guy that working in the same file. The one that the guy one that he did this full training video on there from the his
Well, I wanted to try to like maybe a little bit continue on it. Yeah, I would. Gerald.
Yeah, try to break it down into serious response, but always something so you're figuring out the overall ball. And then figure out location, and then figure out and then there's really what in and do it now small. Ideally, you should bring that to that. Yeah, except if you want it slower, slower brings slower. If you keep those, this little tiny line with a plus, that one right in the middle. Oh, the one next to it, sorry. The square. You are all good. We're
Oh, for playoffs?
Yeah, like how they change.
Okay, so you took your one as a resolution.
Okay, I can do that.
Okay, because I'm not excited.
Yes.
And then go to the playoffs, the very top, the whole first. And then I'm gonna look on the actually put all sides of the powers. But I believe one is smart and use the customized memory. I don't know if it sounds like it should work in the best, but I think it's really in your brain that would be like a good start.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's weird. And usually I will just always, I like that same time in my there and I can just go and I'm actually so I'll do it. And you shouldn't have to worry about that. It's going to do it based off of whatever you put through. And then this is all of your awards. Display size change from window to summary text. You can both sides of the page. And then at the very bottom, it says the file. Otherwise, I think if you default so generically, so
Listen, do you have something in your
I just like I just recreated the
That's okay. Did everything make sense? Did it
Yeah.
really well?
Oh yeah. Thank you.
That's great. Very slow. That's okay. Okay, this happens. Okay, so remind me, either of y'all not it. You have it. Totally fine. Okay. Yeah. This is Oh, so okay, so you know, so switching, the only way you switching is basically the word of the place that I that word. So this is that little circle on the top of the bottom word. So you see that little circle on the very top? So I am going to find something that So basically kind of get your ball how you like it, and then start with the actual position of the ball for a little bit and work to that. So first, where it is in ice, where you need the first position, and you may need to add some pitch. The bottom is the same thing. So sometimes you might have your ball where you want it to stretch down to the ground. I'm going here, man. So yeah, it just kind of depends what you're trying to do. For a lot of bounce and stuff, I'm not actually most of the bouncing. You see for running with you. So if you want to use the actual ball, you do.
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
Oh, okay. So that's really now you can move into the same ball. Yeah. So now if you get front on this, it's only going to do is when you slow it. Yeah. So now if you want to get rid of it, you can. Use something called move it out. And then it'll show you with that only with the box version of like the orange. That's the problem. So, and it will show like this, and you have to use that right. Honestly, yeah, I've been kind of just trying to get a feel for animation in general. It's kind of easy to teach. Use like the different other people are doing like just all kinds of stuff. But so you can kind of get a feel for how we do. So much animation is just vibing it out. Yeah, it's kind of vibing it out. If you want to do it like that's how my friend works. I'm like, mathematically, you probably can do it. And like there, you can look at like kind of the differences. So like there's kind of a formula to it. Usually it's kind of you would follow those equal amount of energy, different stuff into it. If you want to find it. Kind of like set your piece and go with them. See what it looks like, and then kind of go running on it. And then you kind of set up your ball on hold, and then you kind of start going down and do it. I want to
I would just wait. Yeah, I was just like, she'll know. I'm fine with that, but I feel like that was the issue because she was like, you need to stay in this certain spot or if it's not make the reference at all, and then everything, which is probably what's happening. Yes. I'm doing my grease pencil right now. My grease pencil.
Really?
Yeah.
I wish. It'd be nice to do here.
And then you have a pen. And then it saves you and then it It's not hard. I've done the same one before. Pops up that exact same model. A little bit, yeah. The reading is different though. Like some of my stuff is so good. I was just like, but yeah, it's amazing stuff. I did it like an obstacle course, so we went through that. Oh. Oh, you hate me. Goodbye. Yeah. Goodbye. Also, look at your teacher. Yeah, I heard you well. What we do? We're just kind of like experimenting with the basketball. And yeah, but because some people were struggling really hard with it, and then some people like kept crashing, and she just like experiment with it as much as you can, and then if you want to like experiment, how was the demo? It was good. Yeah, I also told her that. I always have a dang excuse for you. I'm like, we'll be here.
We're just gonna work on the ball and have it get better. That's it. So, and that happens to the extended version.
So what I was, see, when I was there, and I'm really excited. I was doing some of that spot.
Okay. Now, there we go. Okay. But now, if you just have the next slide, we'll continue.
I only need like 1 inch. So I'm really quick. That's it. Like I don't need help with any videos. I just need help with like you know how in the bouncing ball, like the rig on the routine, it would like mess up your character. Like the little circle thing. Yes. Okay, well no. Like I would move one of it, but then like it would mess up like the tail or like say attached or it's not saying like that like the whole
Okay.
okay.
Any other questions? So first things first, I would recommend yeah. That's the thing. I think a lot of people think there's like animation and graphics that if I put my animated character like up against the system, like I can't know there's like all clear for them. So the animator is literally like putting the hand like this and then moving a finger and then moving a finger. Animators are working seconds, not shots usually. And like it might be a goal for who is your time. For 3 seconds of animation, but they do it good. They know it has.
So I'm gonna get the first one, there's usually some, that's the online version, but it's another one. It was pretty hard. No.
That's going to be what you use for pizza. Usually, these release it'll corner and it shows you what you're able to do. So it can only use location. It is only repeat. So it'll lock you out of the game. But you set location here so you can then take the ball that one on the outside and kind of move it and do the whole thing. And then the back end of it, you can go back and then set it in for rotation. And then the last thing you would do would be most of the circle at the top. Something kind of zoom really in and like so there's two and they work independently. So you select all it does is that's one spot. So you have the top and bottom one because for instance if the ball's here and you want to stretch it for reach into the ground, you can pull it down at the bottom or if you have it where you want to you have control over both. So if your ball should kind of come in and set it up and down, you can shoot it at an angle, you have that ball with the face line up with the different things. That's what you kind of work with it, kind of drill down and then just go that way. That usually helps you work out your before you It's very different, and it's different when you're working. So as soon as I started doing that, spring, I'll make it pretty. Sounds like I know.
So one of those was missing, it was obvious. You can't see that class. You can't see that class. You can't even like hide and be like, oh. He said that it's actually that's what he said. He said on one side of the class, he said
I want to really get a good foundation. I will spend a lot of time.
she said she's surprised. She said she didn't see it.
Circle back to the other posting I sent. Alright.
I didn't break anything.
But at the same time, it's like,
Like, because you don't select the whole thing.
give it more time. These are the questions to ask.
You gotta select one part at a time.
I have to like these all individually.
I don't even know the person.
I know this should be the first thing I told them. I was like, hey, you know how to use the
I took like all the rings.
So that bottom one with graph, I'm fine. They wanted to round it, kind of like Saturn ring.
Yeah.
That's the kind of like really big. Not as much sense. Yeah, it's the easy thing. It's, I don't know what's real. I'm just like, do you know?
Essentially, like,
Seeing the goals that are on there, so it shows you, it's gonna show you on the software right now what you can do. Like,
Okay.
what you should be, what the grid should be set up where it's like, so like the little circle on the top, that's a squash stretch, right? I figured that out. Okay. So that makes only make it go up and down, so that if you have your ball and it's coming in the frame, like flying in like this, you have to actually rotate the ball first and then you can scratch that down.
Okay. And then I was thinking about using multiple cameras. Is that too ambitious, or is that like? I mean, it's only 2 cameras. And then it like, so it's gonna be 1 camera in the daytime. Is that too much? Should I not do that?
Like,
Okay. Like you can't do like blender maps where it goes to like 1 That's
like also keeping in place, and just buy like an X-ray and like over here, like set key here, set key over here, and then the camera.
and it's like just okay, yeah.
So that's
the next frame.
Yeah, so that one,
Yeah, I can do
just
that.
like in my camera pass.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, I'll do that. And that's how you leave your brain around. So then you literally see it on the seat, like, oh, now it's the camera.
Okay, great. Yeah, I can do that. Yeah, no, I have no issue. I'm doing it.
I'm gonna have it like, yeah, you get a cute little like tail.
Yes.
Around it. That's cute.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cute.
And it's super easy as well.
I was saying, I can like make two inside, two on the back, and then something on the top. It's like attached somewhere.
I don't
And then
know
like
if
cuts into it so now it's not just on one plane. So that way
in general, the little
small.
things that's not supposed to be like a big grabber and everything. It's all the class. And I actually don't know.
It's like young out there.
The second place that you can do stuff with like our ball guy.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah, and then develop a ball too. I
have
So
no.
I, for the most part, would avoid it.
So it's only 4 minutes.
And don't worry about that stuff.
I don't mind, but it's just really like let's say she presents it, but just talk it out. Show me how she is. I want to take my phone. I can't. She's like,
Okay, so if you have to think of it, anything close to labs, like that one.
and I was like, she's like, oh, my God, it's really hard to do. She always wants to tell you the phone. When she's rejected, it's hard not to. I'm so tired. I'm totally lost.
How you happy with it?
Cause she's like, she's like super hyper, or like super like very nervous. She speaks that way. I don't think she is, but she just speaks that way. She's like, she's like genuinely like super. And she was just sweet. I'm like, oh no, it's just like my classmates are super hyper. She's like, they're like, all they do is like they're like constantly like. Something about the class really is so much. But the class is something like it's just like it's just sweet. Now she's kind of so I can't go turn the presentation and talk to her. I have to just face her. And I don't know. I kind of just and I don't know if this is you know, I'm going to art. And I'm like only 4 people in the class. You've already been in most of the class. But one person was in the school.
I mean, I'll love it if it's just proud of it. It's not great. So we're gonna
I'm so glad you did this.
I've never touched mine. But like you know, I didn't know things left and right.
No, it's not.
I mean, I just wouldn't do it. I think I could. You know, I think that.
I think that's what it is. It's him like performance and he's like covered in paint. And he's literally rolling up against the wall. You should just never see his ass cheeks are covered in black paint. It's so weird. He's like, I told him that. It's so weird. I mean, I really like his music. He goes and he sings. It looks really cool. But then he just one that's hard. At least the one like the second thing I like is when he made it from you know he really just called it and it's like it splatters over his wall. It's like that's what it is. I think this like you should play it so weird. For 16 hours, I haven't seen what that's going to be. Then I go see for food.
I skipped a couple of y'all back here.
You're really doing work, right? Wow. Has he been doing work this entire time? Oh, that's the real question. You're twiddling your thumbs. He's like, I showed up an hour late just to do nothing. Texting his roster. No, you were on our roster not to even talk to them.
This will be like an old half everybody.
It's okay, it's me too, but so that's cool. Are you gonna join that? Why not?
Oh, you have like an actual like
That's not a vinyl house. Did you listen to parties? Yeah, I went to the Tom House one where they were at the beach out on the drop and about an hour away.
It's a six. Yeah, I don't know. We like the it starts at 6. I don't know what time it starts. 6 p.m. I do that. Yeah. Honestly, dude, I'd be so down. It's pretty nice. No, it's fine. You just show up. You just gotta it's probably right there in class. Sometimes in class, I'm like, it's nice and dark. And then you just gotta open. Hey, I listen to them. Listen to them. Completely is happening in the same major. Double major. I can drive. I'm saying, only for you to go back here. Then I will make my car and drive past this. And just put it over there. Straight to the road. Yeah. Hey, I'm gonna go. You said you can't do it. So you said, I know. No, no, actually, she knows she was like, it's funny thing is when you usually, dude, she's so fast. Yes. I think we the first that she was out like 20 minutes early. And I was just so fast. Pretty much. like multiple people are walking. This is like it's weird. Like these are weird. Maybe my mom's like 3 times in the kids. Like actually.
Yeah, we're all.
You're not home for this emerged.
Like, look at that. It also helps me like travel my houses because I go really close by. So when I have that, yeah, but sometimes it'll be on like a different. I have my Wi-Fi and it'll be over there and I can't see it. That one is very. I think she's like the smallest.
No, I was trying to get it.
Easily bubbles.
Sometimes I was watching it.
But I feel like that's a little more so I like yeah, like I can see my entire screen is definitely in the way. When I'm doing like screenshots, sometimes you can see like some like the particles that is there's like stars in it. Like this is like this would be great for like
This is like the Harry Potter movie. You know what I'm talking about?
I mean, I don't do that.
Okay, she looks better than
Like this is good.
actually some shit in her.
Yeah, the one where I can't see. I like this cross between the right. It's like right.
No, she won't like shade that fire. But like, I'm not gonna Harry Potter these things. It's so funny. You know what's like, yeah.
I like the wisps. This was really
But literally, like kissing me out. He's barely the last one. driving all around England. All my friends.
Yeah, I'll just like head over. I might not exercise, but I'll see you.
I actually was sicko. I mean, cardio is like my coping intro. At home, I have a dog and I run with her around my neighborhood. We went for like a good 5 miles every morning. Just because I keep running into her because I'm down to get her out. So she has like, I know I'm a dog. Yes. Yes. She's fine. She's living the best life. She's just that's Chelsea. She's like great. I just keep putting this like down. That's my dog. That's my dad. That's low. She loves it. She's such a good dog. But yeah, she got like, but that's my issue with her. She's right in front of so basically what happened is I actually grew up with you. She's a dog that will run after you. So this is a very rare bird. Like she's a rare bird. She's gonna stay in the backyard. So I guess she saw something. She goes out. My dad's like, we go to find a dog. She comes with me. We go out to look at the dog. She has a collar on. She's not gonna take it. And I call for her, and then I hear the dog is coming around the corner. She's like limping to me, and she's like up a hill. We live on a hill, like a big old hill. And she just comes running down. There's people like chasing after her, and they get found her. And I go to her, and I'm like, she's laying on the ground, and she's like bloody, like on her mouth, and everything, and then on her elbow. And my first instinct was that she had all over her dog, and she was like, so the guy that actually getting her was like, is she okay? I was like, oh no. I was like, how is the other dog? I was like, oh, there's so many kinds of dog. And he goes, she had skin, no.
I mean, I think in class over it, you're waiting on me.
Yeah.
There's no way.
Yes.
Really fast. There's almost a guy that's gone.
There's been times I'll suck it.
Very long. And it's still not done. And my friend did 15. And it's I mean that's insane. Yeah, there should be a cutoff. This I did the entire side and it's like but I did the it's very odd. Which I like her. So So I did that. Yeah. And like I did this. My only thing is, like, it uses data you really do all your phone. You have to have a bunch of products.
How about you? Okay. Yeah.
And she emailed her, I need to ask.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay, so it would help a lot if you change your workspace to the animation. I mean, the graphics is kind of fun. You're gonna kind of spend most of your time with it. So for workspace general, change that to animation. I'm like, so I'm sure somebody for those people watching this is doing sniping or settle this stuff. Like a discussion forum or something. So that's what you do. That's what like, yeah, great, you know, which you would want to do. So, recording the email. So, this one, I had to go to the first one to use it. This is very great. It's just really annoying. Like, really annoying. Okay, so this is super easy. Basically, you go to the frame that you want to link to, and then you would select all the keys. So if it's all or one or whatever you want to. So you control copy. You go to the frame that you want to control paste. Oh, okay. Drag it. Drag it. So it will help a lot of people when you make like a little cheat sheet to try to mouse it first a little bit of the controls from the control suck if you've never used them before. Yeah, you select it all and then middle mouse click and if you have like another tool, it'll just kind of pop to the other side of it. If you want to lock it, you use like one axis so that it's just like sliding, it's not actually changing like going up and down. Shift and then that middle mouse click will constrain it to go left and right or up and down. So yeah, see, so now it can do like some like forward slide or do that. And then there's super big tools here, so that might help if you want. That'll just kind of snap it into frames. So then you'll really flip stuff and all weird stuff. Actually, I have on there a whole page on graphic. I have a little thing that shows all these different tools. It's way more straightforward than it looks. There's like a whole bunch of buttons, but it's really like cool. Select it and delete. Yeah, okay, so you gotta increment and save. So it's gonna have, so your file, you have your file saved in there, so file save or file save as. This file is a real file that you were in, like version 40. Yeah, it's the bad thing about when people are up, you see how you do it. They always manage to do that in a whole other color. So you have to change now H A N N. And it goes, it's just gonna magically make first. And it does that. Like the word itself.
Oh my god.
So I will say, so the rigs are set up in a hierarchy to them, usually. So that, like the rotation on here, for instance, one that has a little arrow on it, should, like as soon as you get there, when they're set up properly, that will control things like transmitting and stuff. Will only let you see the stuff that you can control. They basically block you out of the stuff they don't want you to touch. So like Foxtail is a lot more like that. So you right now, like, if you select the rotator, all you can do is rotation. Why? So like you have the rotation selected right now. You set it to rotation.
Press it once.
I did.
So this is
You literally cannot be working. You have to do it out. Every single time. Remember after this? Remember after this?
so that looks like you selected that and you're set to the keys. So I think I need to get a better.
Wow,
This
it
one
worked.
is pretty looking, but you're gonna be better that is better. You can use some constraints built into it.
Why is there no like
So that's no, so these should actually all be constrained around the ball. So if they start controlling on that, something went weird. But again, like this is just practice. So
That's why I said if I like don't have any too fast, because
the box, the rig on that is a little more locked down. And it is just a bouncing ball. Yeah. That's great. But yeah, it is just the ball but with the tail. So just ignore the tail and you can bounce that ball the exact same as you can this one, but you'll see like the rotation you can only rotate. And the translation stuff like the main handle, like around it. Like the one that looks like Saturn that goes around in the middle, that's the one that you use for movement. They all are gonna have like a big fat, like a big ring. That purple one is the one in this one that kind of lives on the ground. And it's a general control that moves everything. So it'd be like, it's more specific use cases because they don't typically use this, but they kind of come on all at once. So I don't actually recommend you use that purple one. I know there's the one that goes when it's more like set up correctly. The one that goes around the ball itself and break the ball. That would be moving the ball. Then the rotation one has a little arrow in this one that's controlling the rotation. And then the squash and stretch little, it's like a little ring at the top and ring at the bottom. That's just the squash and stretch. It's really the only thing you can touch with those three. But if you touch like any one, like the rotation, it's going to light up the other parts. It's not setting keys on the stuff that those do. It's just moving so that like, so that if this was your ball and your squash and stretch controller is on the top and the bottom, if you rotate the ball, squash and stretch is now here and you can rotate it so that if your ball's like jumping in the frame, it can squash down instead of being perfectly vertical. So I'll let you rotate those controls go with it. It's not messing anything up, if that makes sense. Yes, there's lots of that. Off the top of my head, I don't.
You seem to be doing pretty well.
On the fine side. That's called soft body modeling. I don't follow a lot of modeling side of videos and stuff, but I know you're right. What you're looking at about is not like, you know, like this sort of thing, or something like hard body. It's hard body modeling, and then there's soft body modeling, which is like material. Soft body's hard, so they usually don't cover that. That's more soft body. If you like the manual soft body modeling and try is literally pushing and pulling vertices and like extruding faces. Yeah, very much.
Which is the morning when I was joining. Of course, the question about the mornings was fun. If you
I searched on YouTube for a soft body modeling video for like beginners. That would be exactly what you were looking for. That would show you how to
Because
press.
I just saw some YouTube classes and that's what it's yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people it's
Oh, poor Hope is still here. We can't see her. See, she's off. Alright, I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna stop, Hope. Bye bye. I'm gonna stop this.